I'm Stephanie Board, and I'm running for the Texas House, District 126. Progress Texas is awesome. I love that you guys have those shorter daily podcasts so that we can get updates all the time. And then I love the longer in-depth ones where you give some more information and just keeping track of what's going on in this state and how we can stay up with the Democratic Party and the things going on here.
It's Wednesday, March 25th, 2026, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. Here at Progress Texas, we have built a statewide audience, and we reach millions of Texans monthly. That's thanks to folks like you who invest in independent progressive media by Texans for Texans. Our thanks to Marla McKenzie, Susan Stonecipher, and Emily Evans for their ongoing sustaining support. Our friends, and I use that term very loosely, on the other side of the political aisle are in a complete tizzy this week, and that's largely where we are this morning. We want to tell ourselves that all of this is just about differences of opinion or education or upbringing or financial priorities or cultural backgrounds or whatever, that our opponents on the right are in essence just normal folks trying to do the right thing by the world as they see it. And then we have a morning like today in which our definitions of what's good or what's normal face a serious stress test. We're starting with Stephanie Coython at the San Antonio Current, and what a headline. Pete Hegseth's pastor wants James Talarico to die. This is Pastor Brooks Pottinger, spiritual advisor to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and all of this was said on a podcast where Pottinger's host expressed a desire for Texas Senate candidate James Talarico to die. But then, of course, to be reborn in some kind of weird biblical thing. And Pottinger concurred, labeling Talarico, who, as we know, is himself a Presbyterian seminarian, as a demon and a public enemy due to his progressive religious views. In absence of this apparent spiritual death and renewal idea, the host specifically prayed for God to kill or stop Talarico by, quote, any means necessary, unquote. And Pottinger agreed there, too, calling for Talarico to be, quote, crucified with Christ, unquote. This jackass podcast host has a history of extremist rhetoric pushing for public executions, including for people who seek abortion care, all of which aligns with the arch-conservative Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, to which Pottinger's congregation, including Department of War Secretary Pete Hegseth, who is now overseeing what he has stated he sees as a holy war against Islam in the Middle East, belongs. In fact, Hegseth has brought Pottinger to the Pentagon to lead prayer services, in which the same pastor has referred to Hegseth's boss, Donald Trump, as a leader divinely appointed by God. Talarico's response is gold. He took to Twitter to say, quote, Jesus loves. Christian nationalism kills. You may pray for my death, pastor, but I still love you. I love you more than you could ever hate me, unquote. The religious right is in a full panic over James Talarico, who has done little more than simply model the actual teachings of Christianity, serving in contrast to plainly and fully expose how those same teachings have been distorted and defiled by radical conservatives for their own political and financial ends. American Christian nationalism and the role it now plays in international armed conflict is both the scariest and the most fascinating story in the bucket right now, you ask me, so I'm all ears to hear what Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has in mind with this new Senate Select Committee on Religious Liberty, which he says is being formed in the effort to educate Texans about their rights where religion is concerned under the First Amendment. Interesting that almost all of Patrick's appointees to this committee are Republicans with a lot more practice in imposing their religious views on you than they do in taking steps to protect your right to worship as you please. For example, Committee Chair Phil King of Weatherford has been central to efforts to mandate Ten Commandments displays in classrooms and to assign religious chaplains to replace trained counselors in Texas schools. Vice Chair Angela Paxton of McKinney has taken a religious angle in her successful efforts to take away the reproductive freedom of Texas women. Brent Hagenbuck of Denton is one of the most staunch Christian nationalists in the Senate, having pushed hard to funnel your public tax dollars into private religious schools via vouchers. Brian Hughes of Tyler is known for all manner of theocratic legislation, including bills that would erect religious symbols in government spaces. Charles Perry of Lubbock commonly and casually slings around biblical justification for his crusades against LGBTQ+ rights, especially those of the trans community. Adam Hinojosa of Corpus Christi is known for his work in making sure that, quote, sincerely held religious beliefs, unquote, can be a reason for conservatives to deny services or care to customers and patients in Texas. Interestingly, the seventh member of Dan Patrick's new Religious Liberty Committee is El Paso Democrat Cesar Blanco, who's considered a moderate and perhaps overly bipartisan for some of progressive position, but Blanco has consistently voted against all of the stuff we've just mentioned. Perhaps a bit of a token Democrat here. We plan to invite Senator Blanco on to give us an inside view of what this committee is looking to accomplish. Let's stick with Dan Patrick for one more here, as he seems to have himself all wadded up over Texas's newest state senator, Taylor Ramett of Tarrant County. Of course, seen as a beacon of hope for Democrats across Texas after he wiped the floor with Republican Lee Wamsgans in that special election up in the Fort Worth area a few weeks back. The two, of course, are at it again for a rematch in November. Eleanor Dearman at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram says Ramett is reacting to having been shut out of any committee assignments for the 2027 interim session. Accurately and mildly, I'd say, calling Patrick's move, quote, petty partisan politics, unquote, that silences his Tarrant County constituents. Ramett was one of only 4 senators in the entire body who were left out. The other 3 are Republicans who are either retiring, awaiting federal confirmation, or seeking another office. Dan Patrick is a Lee Wamsgans backer, so this makes sense in that context, but Taylor Ramett is undeterred. He says his office is proceeding with the hard work he promised Tarrant County voters on the campaign trail to improve their lives. Up to D.C., where Ted Cruz is next this morning. Jeremy Wallace at the Houston Chronicle says America's oiliest senator is dangling a bit of a rotten carrot before Democrats in an effort to get them to cave on DHS funding and to end the 6-week partial government shutdown. Cruz suggests that the GOP should agree to fund the entire Department of Homeland Security except for ICE, drastic reform of which the Dems are holding out for. Cruz is hoping the Democrats will forget that ICE is already being funded separately through the big bullshit bill, unlike TSA. Cruz says his plan after the government reopens would be to use the budget reconciliation process to fund ICE for the next decade. That only requires a simple majority vote and can be done without a single Democrat's help. Will the Dems fall for this and cave on DHS funding? We shall soon see. The Save America Act, as we've talked about, is also a big sticking point in D.C. right now, with Donald Trump seeing that as his only sure way to rig the midterm and save his own skin. Turns out, co-author and Texas Congressman Chip Roy, who's also in a primary runoff for Texas Attorney General, has admitted on video that the SAVE Act will be a huge pain in the ass for married women whose current names don't match their birth certificates. Jacob Knudsen at Democracy Docket says a leaked video reveals Roy privately acknowledging that his Save America Act could create registration hurdles for married women, despite his repeated and public claims to the contrary, referring to his own chief of staff, who had struggled with similar Real ID paperwork requirements after she underwent a name change. Roy's official messaging labels concern about the SAVE Act disenfranchising women as absurd, but even he knows that the bill's mandate for documentary proof of citizenship will very specifically complicate the voting process for an estimated 69 million American women. The good news here is that the Save America Act still faces extremely low odds of passing the Senate, many analysts describing its passage as extremely unlikely, if not impossible, under current rules. But Trump wants it, Trump is determined, and Trump is desperate. We continue watching. Progress Texas is expanding our top-rated podcast network to include Spanish-speaking media to increase the reach of our progressive messages daily. See the link in the show notes to make your donation towards Spanish media today. We have a program note for our Houston listeners. The next episode of our In Progress Roundtable show will be the first in Afternoon Drive on KPFT 90.1 FM. The show is moving and will now come to you in the middle of a new Thursday afternoon block of progressive political programming. Starting tomorrow, Thursday, March 26th, when In Progress will be on at 6:30 p.m. every Thursday evening after the Progressive Forum and before the midterm show with Ernest Wittring. With your support, we hope to expand our radio footprint beyond Houston to the top 5 Texas media markets this year. Click the link in the show notes to make your tax-deductible donation to help us reach new audiences via Texas Radio. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. Our mission at Progress Texas is to improve and save Texans' lives by acting on our shared bold progressive values, and that starts with countering the billionaire and corporate-funded conservative disinformation machine. Progress Texas is an independent, nonprofit, rapid response media organization. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media in action in the Lone Star State. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.